Can you introduce yourself again?
Marilyn Arnold.
Okay.
And if you are a child of Susan, June, or Lois, or yes, then you are third cousin to me. And the first time that any of our cousins got together before 2003 was when this picture was taken. It was the first time that the Jewetts and the last time that the Jewett family and the Childs family got together. The picture was taken about 1893, and here is Morris Childs and his sister Carrie, and the other four people are Robert Jewett Carey, who was my grandfather, Malcolm Jewett, and Philip Jewett. And
He got old fast.
and their little sister Mildred is missing because I don't know if she wasn't born yet or is not in the picture for whatever reason. So in 2003, there's the first time that members of the Jewett and the Childs family got together again, which I thought was quite interesting.
What year was this one?
This picture was taken, given the fact that these children look about that age, about 1895, 1898.
You know what house that is?
I did. This is the Leaning Elm Farm. It's on Main Street in Reading, Massachusetts. It's a historic farm in that town. It's still standing. It was renovated recently in the last 10 years. And there is a leaning elm tree, or was, next to it. And Great Aunt Carrie, who everybody's heard stories about that did the carvings, used to get some of the wood from the leaning elm tree. And my mother told stories to me when she was a child of the missionaries camping in the backyard. So it must have been some of you that camped in the backyard.
Yeah, our grandmother, because our grandmother was a missionary.
I know, so it had to have been some of the missionaries that camped in the backyard of this house. And this house is still standing.
Straighten up a little bit. That's Grandpa's side.
Mother. Grandpa's mother was Susan
Grandpa's
Blake.
mother.
Have this come
Okay.
out okay?
So my great-grandmother was Mary Blake, who married the Jewett. There was Carrie Blake, who never married, and she did the carvings.
See, so we can hear.
Here's an example of one of her bears.
Wow.
Here's a bearkin.
So these are her carvings.
Here is a little rabbit and a little tiny monkey.
You should come up later and take a closer look at these things.
What?
Those are nuts. I was guessing almond, but
I don't
you
know.
unless it's something else.
And I don't know if this was done by Carrie or if it's done by my mother. She also taught my mother how to carve. It doesn't seem as intricate, so I would think perhaps it might have been my mother.
Wow.
But, and perhaps she did this little little sketch, I don't know. But it seemed to be with the family things. Don't know. Maybe somebody can help me with this. Anyway, those three sisters had a father. This is Frederick William Blake. Clearly has
A little
light
bit,
or
yeah.
green eyes. At one point, Ty and I decided that they might be a bit crossed. At one point, he was a manufacturer of Excelsior washing powder, whatever that might have been. He was born in Boston. He died in Reading, Massachusetts, at the home of his daughter, Mariana. And Mariana, who was also called Minnie, apparently, which I didn't know until I met you folks. And I'm starting with this picture just to orient us because it was his Blake ancestors that fought in the Revolutionary War. Both his grandfather, Thomas, and his great-grandfather, Edward, and his wife was Carolyn Louisa Adams, and her grandfather and great-grandfather, Samuel and Stephen Adams, also fought in the Revolutionary War. So it was a very patriotic, very interesting family. There's a lot of information on them. Here is our heritage.
Can't see it here.
We'll start with Blakes. The Blakes go back to the 1630s. They settled in Dorchester on Dorchester Neck. They built either the first or the second house on Dorchester Neck, which is now called South Boston or Southie. And they lived in the corner of 4th and O or P. Apparently parts of the house still remain there. I've not been able to identify them. Don't know. But there is a Blake house that is in existence in Boston. So we moved to this site, and it's incredible. It's got, the roof is like this, incredibly angled.
And Jim Cook was caretaker there for quite a while.
What's he doing? But it is one of the oldest frame houses in Massachusetts, and in fact, it's older than the Revere House. And I walked up to it and I put my hands on these square nails. It's very, very cool. It's open one day a month for tours, and I took my mother there, and they weren't open that day. But it's a very neat house. Just look at the roof.
Where is it?
It's in Dorchester.
Dorchester, yeah, okay.
It's on
Edward
Columbia.
Everett Square.
Columbia
It's so funny,
Avenue.
like we've been there a lot of time there, yeah.
Yeah.
So the Blakes
I don't know how much this camera's.
lived out on Dorchester Neck. They lived out almost to where Castle Island is today, which didn't exist then. I mean, I know you've been to Castle Island, right?
Yeah.
So during the Revolutionary War, that was strategic territory, for both the Patriots and for the British. Their house was taken over by the British, and there are maps that were drawn, and this book passed around, it's really old, but it shows Deacon Blake's house and Deacon Blake's orchards. You're welcome to come up and look at this. It's very interesting. But it's all here. They used to house their men in the house. They used to use the pastures. I'm sure they ate the apples from the trees. But because their house was taken over, of course, they went and fought in the Revolution. So the father, this Thomas, was Thomas, and he had a brother Edward, and their father was Edward. So the father Edward and at least those two sons went and fought in the Revolution, and they were at Trenton with Washington. So, and Edward, I believe, is one of the sons of Cincinnatus, which means he was a general under Washington, which is very interesting. Now, this line goes back into England, and I have it back into the 1630s and some information in England, but it's too much on that. On the Adams side, Stephen Adams, who was the great-grandfather of Carolyn, and her father and his father, Samuel, all fought in the Revolutionary War. Now, Samuel was relatively elderly at that time. He had 5 sons. The oldest son was blind, but the other 4 sons he took with him to fight at the Battle of Bunker Hill. And in fact, they lived in this house that was built in the 1860s and is still standing today in Byfield. And I have pictures of the house, and you're welcome to come up and look at this. And there are pictures of the external part of the house, and pictures of the inside of the house, which shows the fireplaces in front of which they supposedly forged these bullets before the Revolutionary War, which is extremely cool, I think.
Yeah.
And I believe that I have this table in my house.
You have that table in your house?
I think I have this table.
Wow.
And what's very unfortunate is I believe that that table and that mirror used to be in the attic.
Used to be what? Used to be in the attic.
So, but if you are interested in this document or some of the other things, please sign your name onto this, because this is a book that's out of copyright. It's free. It's online. You can download it, make your own copies.
Give me a link and we'll put it on the website.
I can do that. Stephen Adams, when he fought in the Revolution, Stephen Adams, our ancestor, was only 16 years old. And according to the history of Byfield, he was 6'4", the tallest man in Byfield. 6'4" is very tall in that time frame.
Yeah.
In his apparently barefooted. It's just amazing. And he served, his revolutionary pension records are also available if you, I will send you a link, but you can also sign up for an email and I can send you this as well. And you can read it, you can enlarge it. But he served 4 times, and it talks about Bunker Hill, and it talks about him serving at Trenton with Washington. So, I mean, we have some really interesting ancestors. Now, the Adamses came into the Newberry area of Boston. It's about 30 miles north of Boston, for those of you that don't know the area. And they were early settlers, as were Longfellows and the Jewetts. Both the line that I'm descended from and the other line that goes back on, there's another Jewett connection here somewhere. So,
Henry Wadsworth Longfellow's lived there too?
Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, I don't believe lived there. His parents lived in Gore, Maine, which is where I was brought up. By complete coincidence, and I walked by his parents' graves every day between for junior high and high school.
So we are related to Henry Wadsworth.
He is a second cousin to Mary Ann. Mary Ann.
Okay.
So Samuel, no, like, Stephen and Abigail are his parents, or grandparents. Second cousin.
Yes. Yeah.
The
No.
common ancestor is Stephen Longfellow and Abigail Thomas in the top, right?
Yes.
Right.
And Longfellows go back into Newberry into the 1660s. Yes.
So we have this cradle that's supposed to be a Longfellow cradle.
I know.
Now it's Andrew's house. Most of our kids were, raised in it.
Oh, battery's almost
Does
out.
anybody know where that came from?
Mommy's house. We all of us kids started like that.
Everybody, all
Been passed through.
children. And
So it came from 33 Elwood?
yes. but
Where
it-
did they get it?
Well, from, I think, our father got it from his father's house. And, or his mother, his father and mother's house. We have no
Somebody took
documentation.
the rockers off it at some point.
No
That made the
documentation.
rockers for it.
It's like a wicker, it's like a wicker basket. It's really quite beautiful.
But the idea that Henry Wadsworth was reflecting when he was so remote. No, I mean, I don't know how to explain.
That's the family story, but we have absolutely no documentation. This has been passed on word of mouth.
I know.
So,
I know.
who knows, but
Maybe we need to ask the Longfellows if they're missing a cradle.
Blake who wrote Tiger?
Pardon?
Blake who wrote Tiger?
William Blake, is there any relation to William, the poet, English poet William Blake?
What?
You don't know, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
James Blake wrote the Annals of Dorchester.
Okay.
Marilyn, how about John Quincy Adams?
Some say we're distantly related, some say we're not. There are different pedigrees out there.
So they have,
It would be some sort of distant cousin that the original Robert Adams going back.
We should take up a fund and send you to England to find out.
Thank you. I'd be happy to go. I'll accept donations. So, but the theory when they say he is that the Robert Adams was a distant cousin
John,
to somebody that he was related to. I don't know. And here's another mysterious item. Now, I don't know what this is, but I mean, it's kind of like a little kaleidoscope thing, which is really neat to look through. But it's really old, and I don't know what type of wood it's made of, but perhaps Nina can tell me, and perhaps she can tell me how old it is.
Yeah.
But this was given to my mother in the 1930s when she was about 10 or 12 years old, when her father took her to Byfield to meet some of the elderly relatives. Well, you know, I mean, family stories, and she didn't know a couple old women and an old man, and it was a sunny house and near the marsh. And this old man gave it to her, he said, I'd like this back someday, but I've had it all my life, but you can have it for a little while, you know. So she didn't get the concept that, you know, she was going to keep this, but it, you know, it was passed down in the family, and it's clearly really old.
It's like a Victorian toy.
Yeah.
Look through the wet man.
Yeah, I will. Yeah. Dragon's
So
Eye.
we have some
That's
other
cool. Yeah, I have no idea what kind of wood this is.
There's apparently Carrie wrote a letter to her uncle Leonard, who was a sister to Carolyn, at one point in the 1890s, because here's a letter in 1896, and this is already on their website.
Okay.
But she apparently asked him to tell her about the revolutionary service of the ancestors. And so he told her about, you know, Stephen Adams and the service, and he also talks about William Longfellow, and says, well, you must remember the musket that I have that William Longfellow had, that he took with him when he walked from Byfield to Lexington. But apparently he got to Lexington after the battle was over. So he missed the battle, but he said, I still have the musket. So it's now Susan's responsibility to find out where the address book is of Morris, to see if we can find any descendants of the Adams, to find out where this musket is. So,
Lee.
so are there any questions? I mean,
Where's Byfield?
it is, Byfield is parish, it's the parish church, it's centered around the parish, the Byfield Parish Church. Newberry, Rowley, Georgetown. It's about 30 miles north of Boston, about halfway to the New Hampshire border from Boston. It's in a kind of very swampy area, and the house.
Could be a marsh. Is there a sunny house by a marsh there?
What?
Said, is there a sunny house by the marsh there?
So it is a very marshy area, and the Parker River goes through there, which is probably where Susan Parker Blake got her name. Don't know. They can't come back and tell us.
The river got its name.
No, the river was named before that. So if anybody has any questions?
I just show in the book, there's a picture of the Frederick and Caroline Blake house.
Which
in-
I have never seen before.
In Byfield.
Which, according to the census records, was right next door to the Adams house, which has now disappeared. And this is the studio of Carrie Blake, which would have been in the third floor of the Leaning Elm Farm on Main Street in Reading.
So Adams and Blake.
So this would have been next door to this.
Oh.
But this house still exists, and there are only new houses around it. So this house, if this was next door to this doesn't exist. If it was a different house, then maybe it exists.
She's just showing some houses, Susan.
Yeah.
Susan?
So, any questions? It wasn't a formal presentation, just some interesting odd facts.
So where is your Jewett in this? Not on this chart?
Mary Anna Blake married Harold John
Okay.
Mullen Jewett,
Okay.
and they had 5 children. Robert did not have children. Harold was my grandfather. He only had my mother Marjorie, and she only had me. The third child was Philip Longfellow Jewett, and he had 3 children, Philip Longfellow Jr., Norman, and Ruth Holter, who is 92, and they're in the Massachusetts area. And the 4th son was Malcolm.
So why does the long-term name come up in the middle of the
Well, because they have the same common ancestor.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Robert didn't have children. Carrie had Marjorie, my mother. Malcolm, well, Philip had 2 sons and a daughter, and only the daughter is still alive. And Philip had 3 children. Son Jr. had 3 children. Norman had 2 children. Ruth had 5. So we have a bunch of third cousins out there named Jewett or other names. Malcolm had 2 families. One remained in Massachusetts. There are probably 5 third cousins from that family. And we had a second family in New York. And then the other child, Mildred, had 1 daughter, had 3 sons, and most of them are in New Hampshire.
So, Morris Johnson, you sent him?
Right there.
Yeah, they're cousins.
This is Mary Anna Blake Jewett. This is Mary Anna Blake Jewett, who is the sister to Susan Parker Blake Childs and Carrie. And this woman was my other great-grandmother. And the only other picture I have of her is with this humongous black umbrella, and she looks very frightening. And my grandfather wrote on the back, "For our bosses."
Oh, yeah.
It was very funny. And they lived next door to one another.
Can you do the family group again, Lois wanted to see?
Yes.
Tell Lois.
Just turn the clock back.
So the boys,
Morris and Carrie.
and that's Carrie.
There's not much. We're recording and ready.
That's your father. And that's taken in there. So you're welcome to come up and look at stuff.
Thank you.